we talked about making a transition to something new that we're getting ready to launch, which we're in the midst of right now. And pretty soon we'll be able to share with more about that with you. But for now, we're doing Mindful Monday. So today we're going to circle back to a topic we've discussed in the past because I continue to get requests and positive feedback around the topic of mental fortitude. In fact, I was thinking about mental fortitude and what is it? And I was thinking about this idea of it's like our inner core. I remember recently talking with a physical therapist. I've had some back problems and do some stretches. And in the midst of that, I remember my physical therapist saying to me, "Have you ever done core work?" And I was like, You mean like sit ups?" And she went on to explain like how strengthening our core actually is foundational to just about everything else we can do. When we live and for athletes when they compete, or when we like just in our bodies, right? Like when we move and when we exercise, it actually comes from our core. And so when I was thinking about mental fortitude, again, I thought of it kind of in this way. It's kind of like this idea of mental fortitude in today's conversation is around strengthening the inner core. So first of all, I think it's helpful for us to be able to get an understanding of what is mental fortitude. Let me just start with maybe a little bit more of a clinical response and then just make that a little bit more applicable for us. So, mental fortitude, let me read it to you. It says, mental fortitude is the ability to tolerate discomfort, regulate emotions, and maintain cognitive flexibility under stress. Okay, so what does that all mean? It means that it's really around this idea of like, think about it like mental endurance. It's not really about avoiding difficult situations, but rather mental fortitude is about how to navigate through them with strength and with awareness. That's what mental fortitude is. So, mental fortitude is often associated, in fact, I used this word earlier, with the idea of emotional regulation. What is emotional regulation? It's a function of our frontal cortex and the ability to override reactive patterns driven by the amygdala. So this is in the back of our brain, our amygdala, and it's pushing these hormones and chemicals and all these things into our brain. Again, this prefrontal cortex part of us is where, again, emotional regulation, which really this idea of our ability to be in charge of our emotions rather than our emotions to be in charge of us. Mental fortitude, one of the ways that we teach that and we actually strengthen that in our clinics here at LiveWell is through what's called DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. It's around grounding in mindfulness. It's about the ability to make the connection between our mind and our body and our spirit. It's connecting what we know psychosomatic. It's the way that emotions show up in us physically as well as emotionally. And then there's this other work that we do called CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And in CBT, it's around like reframing our thoughts. It's about challenging catastrophizing that happens, in our mind, and it's about maintaining like flexibility, realistic mindsets under pressure. There's been a ton of studies about mental fortitude, and so in fact, the American Psychological Association, the APA, they've they've come out with results, and it's actually not surprising. So, mental resilience or mental fortitude connects with better sleep, decreased anxiety, higher workplace performance, reduced risk of burnout. I mean, those are just a few of the many benefits of mental fortitude. So, as I share those, I know for myself, I'm like, yes, please sign me up, more of that. So, if you're hearing this and you're thinking that maybe the same thing, right? How do I get that? How do I get better sleep, decreased anxiety, higher workplace performance? And reduced burnout. Well, it's really around this idea of like the brain. The brain, we have to remember the brain is a muscle. The brain is adaptive. We can train our brain, right, to respond differently over time. I talked about mind, body, and spirit. I want to connect the dots here for a moment. Think about like fortitude Fortitude is actually directly related to faith. Mental fortitude is not just psychological, it's actually also spiritual. I love this verse. I think it's the Apostle Paul in 2 Timothy in chapter 1, where he says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind." That last part there, and of a sound mind. The phrase "sound mind" here in this is written in Greek originally. It actually means something like self-discipline or right thinking. Like mental fortitude is about being able to be centered around the truth, like not swayed by fear, by shame, by impulse, or by any other thing. So when we have spiritual resilience and we pair that with mental fortitude, actually it's pretty incredible. We start to see some of these kinds of things in like a mindset shift. Something, the shift to be able to say, hey, this may be hard and I'm not alone. Or I may be pressed, but I'm not crushed. Or how about this one? This is not the end of my story. Right? So when difficult things happen, right? Well, like when there's distress, right? Pairing together the truths that we know, like our spiritual truths, with this mental, emotional, mind, body, spirit work that we're doing, right? This shift in our mindset that increases fortitude. Let me share a story with you. So I worked with this woman in our clinics here at Livewell. Let's just call her Maria. So she had come in just soon after she had gotten divorced, and what she recognizes, like, her identity was like all wrapped up in the relationship that she was in her marriage for years. And so when that relationship ended, she was kind of unraveling. Like, she didn't know who she was anymore. So she was grieving. She was anxious. She was battling the inner critic that was telling her that she had failed. And at first she like struggled, like just struggled in the daily to function. Like, she couldn't get out of bed. But eventually she started to show up to therapy, and we focused on these three simple things. We focused on cognitive reframing. What is cognitive reframing? Cognitive reframing is catching and challenging thoughts. So in the case for this client, Maria, it was a thought of something like, I'm, without that relationship, I'm nothing. Maybe it was the thoughts of like, I'm worthless. So cognitive reframing is catching and challenging. The catching part is just paying attention to what are those thoughts that are showing up. And then the challenging part is challenging them against what we know to be true. We talked about distress tolerance. We focused in on this idea of distress tolerance. In fact, in the middle of the word distress, or at the end of that word, we get stress, right? Stress is a form of distress. Tolerance just means our ability to handle it. So we use like breathing techniques, mindfulness. Even for her, because she was a person of faith, we use prayer to regulate those emotions. And then the third thing we focused on was value-based actions. Value-based actions was to be able to say, hey, I get to decide how I'm going to respond to this, right? Based on my beliefs, my values, from a centered place where I'm in charge. Value-based actions. So we're rediscovering purpose, taking small steps forward. So over time with Maria, like, she just didn't learn to cope, but rather she developed fortitude, right? Her ability to navigate through this with strength and awareness. Like, her pain didn't like suddenly disappear or go away, but her mindset started to shift. And so I remember working with her, like, some of the statements she came up with, right? When she challenged, and the key part of these three C's, which comes from cognitive reframing and cognitive behavioral therapy, is she started to change. She changed her mindset. So things like, you know what, this isn't the end of me. This relationship, it doesn't define me. Like this, she said, I can feel the weight of that loss of relationship and still move forward. Things like I'm not defined by what broke. I am being refined through it. I love that, right? I'm not defined by what broke, but I am being refined through it. Like that's fortitude. That's not control, but it's courage. Okay, so I want to spend a few moments just talking about the tools for mental fortitude that you can apply this week. Like, let's just take this and let's make this actionable. So, I'm going to give you a few specific steps. The first one is this: I want you to name the narrative. Number one, name the narrative. So, I want you to take what we used from cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and these thought monitoring tools. So we're going to catch the thought. We're going to catch the automatic thoughts, and we're going to give it a name, and we're going to put it to a narrative. So here's an example of that. Okay. The automatic thought, right? When something happens, a situation takes place, like I'm failing, right? That's a thought. But what if we can catch and we can start to challenge and we can start to change in a way that's more helpful, more healthy, and we're going to connect it to a bigger story, right? So from I'm failing, catch, challenge, and change to something like I'm struggling, but still moving forward, right? It's not that I'm failing, it's that I'm struggling and I'm moving forward. Or what if a situation happens and the automatic thought is, this is too much? Catch, challenge, and change to something like this reframing might be, this is hard, and I've done hard things before. And I know I can do this hard thing too. You know what you notice in these is it's not minimizing, discounting, or eliminating the emotion in it. No, it's actually super validating. Right? In both of these examples, from I'm failing to I'm struggling. I'm not failing. I'm just struggling. Or this is too much, to be able to validate, you know what, this is hard work. But then we add to that part, right? I'm struggling and I'm moving through it. Or this is hard work and I've done work like this before, and I know I can do it again. Okay, so that's number one. Name the narrative. Again, we're going to use that CBT tool: catch, challenge, and change. Here's the second one: regulate before you react. This is a tool from DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. You're going to stop. Okay, STOP. Try to remember this acronym. You're going to stop, take a breath, observe, proceed. Right? STOP. So S is stop, T is take a break, O is observe, and P is proceed. And specifically, we're going to proceed mindfully. So here's how this is going to work for you this week. Before you spiral, you're going to pause. You're going to take 3 slow, intentional breaths. You're simply going to ask yourself, what's true, what's helpful, and what's next? All right, and then the last thing we're going to put you into action this week is we're going to act on your values. This is number 3. So this actually comes from ACT therapy, ACT. So it's the idea of committed action. So fortitude is about moving in the direction of what matters most, even when it's hard. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to act on our values. We're going to move in the direction of what matters most, even when it's hard. So you're going to ask yourself this question as a part of this: what does courage look like in this moment? Right? That's the place of strength. That's the place of resilience. And that's the place of fortitude. So again, just a quick recap of these tools to build mental fortitude this week. You're going to name the narrative, use the CBT tools of catch, challenge, and change. You're going to regulate before you react, which is the DBT tools of stop, which is stop, take a breath, observe, and proceed. mindfully. And then number 3 is you're going to act on your values. You're going to act yourself this question: what does courage look like in this moment? All right. And if you're up for more, I'm going to give you a weekly challenge. Okay. Practice this week. Choose one situation this week that typically stresses you out or discourages you. Okay. Take a moment, think about it, come up with that, right? One situation that typically stresses you out or discourages you. And here's what I'm asking you to do: write down one unhelpful thought you usually have. This is the idea of an automatic thought, right? When that situation happens, what's the automatic thought that pops up, right? And oftentimes it's an unhelpful thought. Okay. So you're going to write down one unhelpful thought. The second thing you're going to do is one reframe. Okay. This is the work of catch, challenge, and change, right? So when that thought, that unhelpful thought shows up, right, the one that you've written down and identified, you're going to reframe it in a way that is more helpful, more healthy, more productive to the work that you're doing. Okay. And then the third step is I want you to take one value-based action you'll take instead. Okay, so a situation happens, right? There's that automatic thought, right? You've caught it, you've challenged it, you're changing it, you're going to reframe it, right? Okay, let's go back to that example of I'm failing, right? That might be the automatic thought. You're going to catch challenge and change it into the example. Right? I'm struggling, but I'm still moving forward. Okay, so that third part of the game, one value-based action you'll take instead. So what is it that you're going to do differently? That's a behavior, or it's an action that comes at the end of this sequence. Okay, a couple examples before we wrap this up. Like maybe the situation is a conflict with a coworker. Maybe the thought is they're out to get me. Maybe the reframe is, you know what, we're both under a lot of pressure. I'll clarify, not catastrophize. And then the action is I have a respectful conversation instead of avoiding that person like I might have done in the past. Okay, that's a great example to walk through this challenge for the week ahead. All right, so mental fortitude. Again, it's not about avoiding, but it's acting. It's not about choosing to ignore or choosing to work around, but it's rather the strength to navigate through it. Remember these things. You're gonna breathe before you take a break. You're gonna pause before you panic. I think it's important for us. We're just gonna trust. We're gonna trust God. We're gonna trust ourselves. We're gonna trust the process. And yes, we're even gonna trust other people, right? That something deeper is growing inside of us through this work. All right. Thanks for joining me for Mindful Monday. Hope these are practical tools that you can take into the week ahead. Looking forward to seeing you guys soon. Have a great week.